I always have a difficulty finding this because it's not a separate section, but right. But where is it? It is exclusion for single family home. Oh, thanks. Okay, thank you. Section 1815 provides not a blanket exclusion, but a general exclusion for single-family homes under various circumstances, and that would not change. The repeal of Costa-Hawkins would not change any provision of the rent control law except vacancy decontrol. The board has already amended the voters have amended the charter, and the board has amended regulations as appropriate to comport with the provisions of Costa-Hawkins. Now, even the repeal of Costa-Hawkins would not itself result in immediate vacancy decontrol. I mean, vacancy control in Santa Monica, because the charter itself includes provisions that provide for what Costa-Hawkins provides for. Those provisions would have to be changed because the change in Costa-Hawkins wouldn't mandate vacancy control; it would permit vacancy control. So this change in state law would return to local government the authority that it previously had. So all that the repeal would do is end the proscription that local government having vacancy control. It does nothing but that.
Okay, thank you very much, Commissioner Flora.
Yeah, just I'm glad Commissioner Torosis brought up 982. We talked about this with Stephen and I with Assemblymember Bloom a couple years ago. I'm shocked that landlords aren't for it. Let's say you have a situation where you've got 30 units and one of your tenants is in the protected class. Let's say they're differently abled and they're given an exemption for a year. So what you'd basically be doing would be shuttering your building, 29 units, and leaving one poor soul living alone that's got an exemption for an entire year. Why wouldn't you let everybody have the entire year and get 29 rents, times 12 to give everybody that extra year? I mean, this is a gift. And it also happens to be incredibly fair and gives people more time. So I don't understand the opposition to 982 at all. And I would just say, with regard to if Costa-Hawkins was, and this is going to be an uphill climb, anybody listening tonight should know two things. One, I made the motion that I did regarding minutes because we've heard every argument before. There was not a single surprise in the four comments that were made. We know the arguments that are made by ideological folks that are interested in preserving the existing law. And two, it's not as if we're taking these unit rates back down to 1999 levels. Those units that have trickled up from 800 to up now to 3,200, we're just trying to have some control over the 3,200 at this point. It isn't as if we're taking these rates back down 20 years. So the great amounts of money that property owners are making now because of Costa-Hawkins are not going to be taken away. They're simply cities would have the power to re-engage vacancy control. And that's an important point that needs to be made. So I certainly strongly encourage the acceptance of these two. And a quick note about parliamentary procedure and Robert's rules I just want to make, because previous iterations of this board that I've served on have also made this mistake. The way it works is there's a motion, and if it gets a second, then there's discussion. We can wait for consensus to have a motion, or you can have a discussion on whatever the motion is. The discussion can come before or after, but there's no rule that says you have to have consensus before anybody can make a motion that's a completely predictable motion. Thank you.
Noted. Thank you for your comments. Commissioner Foster.
Just a very brief, I concur with Commissioner Flora regarding 982, AB 982, and I was going to say the same thing. If one remains, the landlord stands to make a significant amount of money. I would like to point out, the only reason philosophically that perhaps a landlord would be willing to forego that 12 months of the additional income would be if they're hoping, and their plan would be for the elderly or disabled person to not avail themselves of the full length of their rights, either through a buyout or perhaps harassment. And in many cases, they would hope that the person would leave sooner and thereby would not necessarily want a full building of other people who wouldn't necessarily leave sooner.
Oh, well,
and
in that case, I guess I empathize.
I think that perhaps would be a reason they're opposing, certain organizations are opposing this bill, but delaying the emptying of the building is absolutely a humane and worthwhile effort, and I fully support 982, and I'm ready to support the motion that Commissioner Phyllis is ready to make.
Okay, Commissioner Phyllis, would you like to make a motion?
Yep. I move that we adopt the recommendations of staff to support AB 982 and AB 1506.
For a second. Been a first and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll ask for a roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Phyllis?
Yes.
Commissioner Foster?
Yes.
Commissioner Terosis?
Yes.
Commissioner Flora?
Yes.
And Commissioner Drawn?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, moving on to item 12D, the mid-year budget report for fiscal year 2016 and 2017. Can I have a staff report?
Well, this is just an information item to update you where we are, where we were at the end of 2016, midway through the 2016-17 fiscal year. The report is quite detailed, and I'm just going to be very brief and say that our revenue projections, we are anticipating that by the end of the year we will have collected revenue of approximately $27,000 more than we had originally anticipated, and that's due in large part to our extra efforts to collect past due registration fees, and primarily one judgment that was that had been obtained earlier in small claims court and has recently been paid. So that is contributing significantly and offsetting the reduced interest that we anticipate earning this year. As far as expenditures go, we're pretty much in line with expenditures. There are just two things I want to note. One is that, as you heard earlier, we've had significant petition filings this year, which has resulted in us using our as-needed hearing officers more than we have in the past. One as-needed person helps with all of the mediations. Another helps with hearings. When we have more petitions than the two existing hearing officers can handle. So we have already spent approximately $35,000 of the $50,000 that had originally been allocated. We anticipate that we will potentially spend another $50,000 before the end of the fiscal year. However, that over expenditure in that line will be offset by savings in the permanent employee lines that are attributable in part to an unfilled computer analyst position. Somebody retired and we haven't filled that position while we're rethinking our computer system. We also have some savings from employees who have been out on workers' comp claims or disability because while they're out, we're not paying all of their salaries, so there are some salary savings there. So the bottom line is that we anticipate having reduced our expenditures by the end of the year by about $38,000. And so the original deficit that we had projected of $369,000, we are now anticipating we will be able to reduce that by about $65,000. And anything that is beyond the revenue that we have collected will be paid from the board's reserve fund. So there's a summary. If there are any questions, I'm happy to answer them, although there's one additional thing that I've meant to say. We are currently in the process of developing a workflow that will help us automate some of the extensive processing that's involved with these vacancy registration forms that are filed. As you heard, we receive 4,000 or more a year. We're going to automate that a little bit, and a piece of that we are hoping by the end of this fiscal year to have implemented an online filing for owners to be able to file these online. We'll do the data capture and update our database more efficiently. So that's, although we have not expended a lot in the computer area yet, we anticipate completing that project by the end of the fiscal year, and we will expend the funds that had been allocated for that. And that's something that you, Commissioner Flora, had encouraged us to look into, the online filings. So we are getting there.
Thank you very much. Any questions? Okay. Thank you very much for your report. Now on to 12E, ratification of addendum to the Memorandum of Understanding between the Employees Action Committee and the Santa Monica Rent Control Board, addendum effective January 1st, 2017.
All right, this is an item for you to take an action on. The Employees Action Committee Memorandum of Understanding for 2015 through 2017 provided for a wage reopener to discuss wages for 2017. The negotiations have occurred, and the parties have agreed to a 1.5% cost of living adjustment for starting in January of 2017, which is comparable to what the other employee associations received. In addition, the EAC employees would receive $100 each in a lump sum payment for all of the employees that were on the payroll as of January 1st, and the employees have ratified the amendment, and we're asking you to do the same.
Okay. So we need an action item, so we need to
A motion
have a
to
motion.
approve the addendum.
Okay. Commissioner Terosas.
I move to ratify the addendum.
Second.
Okay. Motion second. Any discussion? Seeing none. Voice vote. If that's appropriate.
No,
I think roll call.
Roll call. Okay. Roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Foster,
Yes?
Commissioner Trosas,
Yes.
Commissioner Flora,
Yes.
Commissioner Phyllis,
Yes.
and Commissioner Duran.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you.
Okay. We are now at item 16, adjournment. I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Okay. Second.
Second.
Voice vote.
Aye.
It's adjourned. Thank you very much. Have a good evening.